Have you ever witnessed an incident so steeped in prejudice that it not only undermines one individual, but also triggers a cascade of change throughout an entire institution? Today's story transports us deep into the heart of downtown, where a venerable bank, long regarded as a pillar of tradition and stability, became an unexpected battleground for dignity, accountability, and transformation. This is the story of Imani Brooks, a poised, determined Black woman whose encounter with a racist bank manager set in motion events that would forever alter the culture at First Heritage Bank and send shockwaves throughout the community. Imani, a longtime client known for her quiet strength and unwavering integrity, arrived at the bank with simple business: to deposit a check and update her account information. Yet what unfolded that fateful morning would transcend routine banking, exposing deep-seated biases and galvanizing change far beyond the institution's marble halls. In a world where silence often protects the status quo, Imani's courage shone like a beacon, challenging outdated protocols and demanding fairness, all while inspiring a movement that would soon ripple across the financial industry. It was a crisp autumn morning when Imani pulled up to First Heritage Bank. The building's striking marble facade, accented by gleaming brass details and towering glass panels, evoked a sense of grandeur and history, a legacy built over decades. Clad in a sharply tailored navy blazer, a delicate silk scarf, and subtle gold jewelry that caught the morning light, Imani embodied both elegance and resolute determination. She parked her car and stepped inside with calm purpose, ready to conduct what should have been a simple transaction. The bank's interior was a blend of classical decor and modern efficiency: polished marble floors, muted conversations, and the quiet clicking of keyboards set against a backdrop of hushed professionalism. Behind the front counter stood Charles Milton, the branch manager, whose reputation for upholding tradition was marred by a hidden bias. His crisp uniform and stern expression betrayed nothing of the prejudice lurking beneath. Yet his eyes scrutinized Imani with an unsettling suspicion as soon as she approached the counter. Imani greeted the teller with a warm, genuine "good morning" and placed a neatly organized envelope on the counter. "I'd like to deposit this check and update my account information, please," she said, her tone both courteous and confident, a tone refined over 15 years of loyal patronage. However, Charles's gaze lingered a moment too long on the envelope before he responded in a clipped, condescending voice. "Ms. Brooks, there appears to be an issue with your account. I don't see your updated details in our system." His words, laced with subtle derision, implied that perhaps she did not belong in his carefully curated environment. Undeterred, Imani calmly retrieved a sleek leather folder from her briefcase. "I've been a client here for over 15 years, she stated evenly. "Please review these documents." Inside the folder were her recent bank statement, correspondence from corporate headquarters, and a confirmation of her account update, each page a testament to her long-standing relationship with the bank. For a long, heavy moment, silence reigned as Charles hesitated, his fingers hovering over his keyboard as if reluctant to reconcile the indisputable evidence in front of him. Danielle, a young teller watching from behind the counter, shifted uncomfortably as the tension escalated. Finally, with a forced tone of authority, Charles muttered, "It seems our system does not reflect your recent update. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding." His response, however, carried a dismissive quality that made it clear he was unwilling to entertain any challenge to his biased assumptions. Before Imani could protest further, Charles leaned in with a patronizing air. "Ms. Brooks, I believe it would be best if we discuss this matter privately," he said, gesturing toward a small office tucked away off the main lobby. "Come with me." His invitation, cloaked in the guise of discretion, was clearly an attempt to remove her from the public eye, and more importantly, to shield his prejudiced practices from scrutiny. Inside the cramped office, the atmosphere grew even more charged. Imani closed the door behind her and fixed Charles with an unwavering gaze. "Explain to me, Mr. Milton," she demanded. "Why must we leave the public area? What exactly is it about my account that is problematic?" Charles shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his voice faltering as he replied, "Miss Brooks, it's simply our protocol. Nothing personal. I'm just following procedures." At that moment, Danielle, who had quietly followed into the office, interjected in a soft, uncertain tone. Sir, please, isn't it true that Ms. Brooks has been with us for years? I've seen her documents, and they're all in order. Charles shot her a warning glance. Danielle, this is not for you to discuss, he snapped sharply. Imani's tone remained calm but grew more insistent. I deserve transparency. If there is an issue, I need to understand it fully. Charles hesitated before offering a strained, It's not that I don't believe you, Ms. Brooks, but sometimes systems can misinterpret data. His attempt at a technical excuse fell flat. Misinterpret data? Imani echoed, her voice rising slightly. The data clearly shows my updates and credentials. Why then do I feel targeted? A heavy silence followed Imani's pointed question. Finally, with a forced conciliatory tone, Charles attempted to defuse the situation. Perhaps there's a technical glitch. I assure you, we will look into it. But for now, let's not cause unnecessary disruption. Danielle's eyes welled with quiet indignation as she added, Mr. Milton, with all due respect, isn't it our duty to serve our clients regardless of any glitch? It feels like this is more about bias than procedure. Charles's face reddened, and he snapped, That is enough, Danielle. Turning back to Imani, he said, Please understand, I am doing what is required. Imani leaned forward, her eyes burning with determination. I require an honest explanation. If you are following procedures, then you must have a valid reason to segregate me from other customers. Otherwise, this is nothing but discrimination. Her words hung in the air, charged with accusation and the promise of accountability. It's also time for you to take accountability. You can do that by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Thank you in advance. Now let's continue the story. Before Charles could muster a further response, the sound of heavy footsteps and the creak of the office door signaled an interruption. Raymond Harris, the regional operations director, known for his progressive outlook and commitment to fairness, strode in. His presence immediately shifted the dynamics in the room. Good morning, everyone, Raymond said, his voice calm but commanding. He surveyed the scene, his eyes landing on Charles before addressing Imani directly. Ms. Brooks, I've reviewed your folder, and your records are impeccable, he declared firmly. Then, turning to Charles, he demanded, Mr. Milton, I expect a full explanation. This behavior does not align with the values of First Heritage Bank. The tension in the room mounted as all eyes focused on Charles. Imani's voice broke the silence once more. I came here today to manage my finances, not to be subjected to undue suspicion and disrespect. I trust that this matter will be rectified immediately. Raymond's gaze was piercing as he added, I will personally investigate this matter. Discrimination in any form will be met with swift and decisive action. As the atmosphere in the office simmered with unresolved tension, a brief but intense exchange erupted between Raymond and Charles. Mr. Milton, Raymond said sharply, your justification of protocol is no excuse when it results in discrimination. How do you expect our clients to trust us if we hide behind technicalities? Charles stammered, I am following the guidelines, sir. Raymond leaned in, his tone icy. Guidelines evolve when they perpetuate injustice. Do you not understand that by isolating Ms. Brooks, you have already compromised our integrity? Danielle, still standing in the doorway, murmured, We must do better, prompting a moment of silence as even Charles's posture visibly slumped. This isn't merely a procedural error, it's a moral failing, Raymond concluded. The exchange left no doubt that accountability was imminent, and everyone in that room felt the weight of the moment. Following the confrontation, Imani was escorted to a private counter by another manager so that every transaction would be carefully documented. As she completed her business, the cool autumn air outside did little to temper the burning resolve that now filled her. What had begun as a routine banking visit had transformed into a pivotal moment, one that would dismantle a legacy of bias and spark far-reaching reforms. Over the next few days, Imani transformed her personal affront into a mission for systemic change. She reached out to local media outlets and civil rights advocates, determined to expose the discriminatory practices hidden behind the bank's storied facade. Headlines such as Discrimination at First Heritage Bank and Client or Catalyst. How one woman's dignity sparked a call for justice soon dominated local news. In televised interviews, Imani spoke with measured conviction. When injustice is allowed to fester, it damages not just individuals, but the very fabric of our community. Silence is not an option when disrespect becomes institutionalized. As the media frenzy grew, it became evident that the damage inflicted by that fateful morning would have profound consequences. Internally, First Heritage Bank launched an inquiry into the incident. Employees, long fearful of retaliation, began to share their own accounts of subtle biases in overt discriminatory practices. The inquiry revealed a disturbing pattern that had persisted within the branch for years. In a dramatic board meeting later leaked to the press, one director stated, "Mr. Milton's actions are symptomatic of a deeply rooted bias that has no place in a modern institution. Decisive action must be taken." Under immense public pressure, Charles Milton was suspended pending a full investigation, and within days was permanently dismissed. The scandal forced the bank to confront its toxic culture head-on. Under the leadership of Raymond Harris, sweeping reforms were implemented, new diversity and sensitivity training programs were introduced, and internal memos underscored a renewed commitment to respect, inclusivity, and accountability. Imani, meanwhile, emerged as a catalyst for broader social change. Determined to ensure that no one else would suffer the indignities she had experienced, she organized community forums and town hall meetings. At one particularly well-attended event held at a local community center, Imani addressed an audience of affected customers, bank employees, and local leaders. "What happened at First Heritage Bank is not an isolated incident," she declared passionately. "It is a symptom of a system that has long marginalized people of color. Today, we have the opportunity to demand transparency, accountability, and meaningful reform. Let this be the beginning of a future where every individual is treated with the dignity they deserve." Her impassioned speech ignited a movement. Activists, legal experts, and even former bank employees banded together to form a coalition dedicated to monitoring financial institutions and demanding fair treatment for all. In the wake of the scandal and the heated board meeting, a palpable shift began to take root among the bank's employees. In hushed tones along the corridors and in break rooms, small groups gathered to reflect on what had transpired. "I always suspected something was wrong, but I never had the courage to speak up," one veteran teller confessed to a colleague, her voice trembling with both regret and relief. Another staff member, a middle-aged loan officer, remarked, "Today we see that silence only perpetuates injustice. It's time we demand accountability and embrace a culture of genuine inclusion." As these candid conversations unfolded, the atmosphere in the branch transformed from one of quiet resignation to determined optimism. Employees began to envision a workplace where respect was not just a policy, but a fundamental value, a space rebuilt on trust and transparency. Their whispered dialogues, filled with shared memories of past oversights and hopes for the future, marked the beginning of a collective awakening. It was clear that while the dismissal of Charles Milton was only the first step, the real challenge lay ahead, transforming a long-standing culture of indifference into one of active, heartfelt accountability. Within First Heritage Bank, the damage wrought by that morning's confrontation began to yield transformative effects. Long-standing employees who had quietly endured discriminatory practices started speaking out. Danielle, once a timid teller, hesitant to question authority, emerged as a vocal advocate for change within the branch. In a series of internal meetings, she tearfully recounted her own experiences of marginalization and vowed to work towards building an inclusive workplace. Her courage inspired many colleagues, and soon a sense of collective accountability began to pervade the institution. Meanwhile, Raymond Harris instituted monthly open forums, inviting employees to discuss challenges, share ideas, and collaboratively redefine the bank's culture. During one forum, a junior employee remarked, "Today, we are not merely addressing a mistake. We are redefining our identity as an institution rooted in equality." These forums became a safe haven for honest dialogue, and gradually even those who had once defended outdated practices began to acknowledge the need for change. The transformation was palpable. A new spirit of openness and inclusion was taking root, promising to reshape the bank's future for the better. In the midst of the internal transformation, an impromptu open forum took place in the bank's break room, where employees gathered to share their hopes and frustrations. "I never thought I'd see the day when our voices would actually be heard," said Marcus, a veteran teller, his tone mixing relief with cautious optimism. "We've suffered in silence for far too long," Linda, a dedicated loan officer, added firmly. Jerome, an assistant manager, chimed in. "I always feared speaking up would cost me my job, but now it feels like our collective voice can change everything." Samantha, a seasoned customer service representative, interjected with passion. "This isn't just about revising outdated policies, it's about reclaiming our dignity." Anxiously, one employee asked, "What if these changes don't stick?" A determined colleague replied, "Then we'll continue pushing until fairness becomes the norm, not the exception." The dialogue was raw and heartfelt, reflecting a newfound unity among the staff. Their words, laden with both vulnerability and resolve, underscored a commitment to ensure that the reforms would not be superficial, but would lay the foundation for a truly inclusive future at First Heritage Bank. In the weeks following the scandal, Imani Brooks continued her tireless work as an agent of change. She hosted weekly gatherings in community centers, libraries, and even outdoor parks, where people from all walks of life could share their experiences and strategize on holding institutions accountable. At one such gathering, a community member stood and declared, "Your courage has given us a voice. We finally feel heard." Another added, "Listening to your story makes us realize that our struggles are shared. Together we can demand a better future." These gatherings not only provided comfort, but also galvanized supporters from diverse backgrounds. As local media and social networks amplified her message, other banks began to re-examine their internal policies, inspired by the notion that fairness and respect are non-negotiable. Imani's influence soon extended beyond the confines of First Heritage Bank. She collaborated with civil rights organizations and legal advocacy groups to draft model policies aimed at eradicating discrimination from the financial industry nationwide. Her journey from personal pain to transformative activism became a beacon of hope for countless individuals who had long suffered in silence. On the first anniversary of that fateful day, First Heritage Bank organized a commemorative event at its headquarters, a symbolic gesture of reconciliation and progress. In a grand hall filled with employees, community leaders, and media representatives, Imani was invited to speak once again. Standing at a polished podium, she recounted the events of that autumn morning with measured passion. "I did not come to the bank seeking conflict," she said, "but when injustice is met with indifference, it can erode trust and destroy lives. Today we celebrate not only the reforms we have achieved, but also the promise of a future where every individual is valued." Her words resonated deeply, drawing thunderous applause from the audience. The event stood as a testament to the power of courage and the transformative impact one person can have on an entire institution, and indeed on society as a whole. Thank you for joining us on this journey through injustice, confrontation, and ultimate transformation. Imani Brooks' story is a powerful reminder that standing up for one's rights can dismantle entrenched biases and pave the way for lasting change. In every community, every institution, and every heart, the seed of justice planted by a single act of courage can grow into a mighty force for good. Have you ever experienced or witnessed a moment when one voice challenged the status quo and changed the course of events? We invite you to share your thoughts and stories in the comments below.